Hey, good afternoon, y'all. This is Ryan Jackson from Ryan Jackson LLC. Hope y'all are having a blessed and wonderful day, or you've had a blessed and wonderful day. Um, I'm doing all right, just hanging in there. Doing this video, it's kind of sad news. A great warrior, soldier, pillar for our community passed away this morning at the age of 96, and I'm speaking of Mr. Harry Belafonte. Mr. Harry Belafonte passed away at 96 years young. I think while I read reports, it was congestive heart failure. When you get 96, that's almost a century. It's almost 100 years. It's 4 years shy of it. So he lived a long time, and he done a lot of things, which I'm going to touch on here in a second. He did a lot in his life, made a lot of contributions to the Black community and in hip hop. I'm going to touch on that too. A lot of us don't realize he made contributions to the world of hip hop. But just a great man. Um, did so much, so much. My condolences to his family. Y'all are in my prayers. I hope Allah grant you peace and comfort during this trying time, the death of your loved one. He's with the ancestors now. He's with with Brother Malcolm, with Dr. King, with Marcus Garvey, the late great Maya Angelou, I should say, Maya Angelou. Um, some great people, some great people. Dr. Huey Newton, Sister Fannie Lou Hamer, Sister Harriet Tubman. He's up there with them. He's in peace now, and may he rest peacefully, Mr. Harry Belafonte. Um, Sherry Belafonte, yeah, I remember his daughter. He had four children, and I remember his daughter Sherry. She was in this show. I don't know if y'all old enough to remember, but I remember it. It was a show called Hotel. Took place in San Francisco. It was an '80s show, and she was in there. I think she was like on the hotel staff. I forgot what her role was in the show, but the role of her character. But his daughter Sherry Belafonte, she was in the show Hotel, which was very popular in the 1980s, and it took place in San Francisco. I'm going to touch on the many contributions of Mr. Belafonte. Let me start off by saying his musical career. He was known for singing calypso. Song was Matilda, was the first calypso song Mr. Harry Belafonte recorded on April 27th, 1953. So almost 70 years ago, he recorded his first calypso song. Calypso was his breakthrough album, which was released in 1956. The album introduced American audiences to calypso music. So it was kind of like it was a breakthrough album for him and for the world of calypso. Even though a brother by the name of Louis Walcott, later who became Minister Louis Farrakhan, was also a calypso singer. He was playing calypso around that same time, the late 40s, early 1950s. So, but he gave up his career to follow the messenger and to be a great leader for the Nation of Islam. I'm talking about the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. He was also, again, a great calypso singer, Louis Walcott. But calypso was Mr. Belafonte's breakthrough album, introduced American audiences to calypso music. Banana Boat song, as we know as Dayo, that reached number 5 on the pop charts. I've heard that song so many times. Great song. Not gonna sing it like, because Mr. Belafonte was a was the master of it, but the Banana Boat song, aka Dayo. Mama Look at Boo Boo was another song he performed in the 50s. He performed a duet with Odetta. There's a Hole in the Bucket. We heard that song. There's a hole in the bucket. He performed that song with Odetta. He was the first Jamaican American to win an Emmy for Revlon Review, Tonight with Belafonte. The first Jamaican American to win an Emmy for that. He was recruited by Frank Sinatra to perform at the inaugural gala of President John F. Kennedy, 1961. So Frank Sinatra thought a lot of Harry Belafonte, Mr. Belafonte, to have him perform at JFK's gala, inaugural gala. His album Midnight Special in 1962 included a young harmonica player by the name of Bob Dylan. So he helped jumpstart the career of Bob Dylan. Didn't know that, but see, Mr. Belafonte, one of his many contributions. He had oh my God, he had a long movie career. Not only was he, big in the music world, but he kind of took a break from music in the mid 60s because the Beatle invasion, people were starting to listen to that type of music. And then you had Motown and, those artists. So he was still doing music, but not as much in the mid 60s, mid to late 60s. But he had a long and prosperous film career. His first movie was Bright Road, was in 1953, 70 years ago. He did this movie with Dorothy Dandridge. He did another movie with Miss Dorothy Dandridge called Carmen Jones, which is a classic. So he did two movies with her, Bright Road in 1953, and a year later, he did Carmen Jones in 1954 with the late, great Dorothy Dandridge. He was going to do another movie. This movie was called, I saw it here. Oh, okay, Porgy and Bess. He was going to do this movie called Porgy and Bess, where he would have once again starred with Miss Dorothy Dandridge, but he refused the role because he objected to its racial stereotyping. So they replaced him with Sidney Poitier, who passed early last year, late January of 2022. Great man as well. So he took a stand, and that was one of many. But okay, Bright Road and Carmen Jones with Dorothy Dandridge. Island in the Sun came out 1957. The World, the Flesh, and the Devil. Odds Against Tomorrow. Buck and the Preacher. Love that movie, 1972. Uptown Saturday Night. He was in a movie with Sidney Poitier and Bill Cosby. Richard Pryor. Flip Wilson was in it. Called Uptown Saturday Night. Great, great classic movie. Love that movie. White Man's Burden. That came out in about 95. I remember seeing that movie on HBO. Saw it a couple of times. It's with John Travolta, and it's where the roles are reversed for Black people and white people. So you know how white people own most of the wealth here in this country? Well, in the movie White Man's Burden, Black people have the status of white people. White people have the status of Black people. So the roles are reversed. So in the movie, White Man's Burden came out in 95. I believe it was 95. Mr. Belafonte plays aristocrat, a rich, wealthy Black man. And he holds the same, racist ideas that wealthy white men hold toward Black men. He has those same ideas. And, John Travolta is a struggling, white man, he's saying this is not right, how, this country treat white men. So the roles are reversed. Love the movie. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. One of my favorite Harry Belafonte movies. He also was in the movie, his last movie, he was in Black Klansman, which came out 5 years ago with John David Washington. He played an old civil rights pioneer in the movie Black Klansman. He tells the story of his friend Jesse Washington being lynched, well, actually being beaten, castrated, lynched, and then burned because he was accused of assaulting a white woman. This was in Waco, Texas. So he plays the role of an elder civil rights pioneer. There are many other movies that Mr. Belafonte has made. The list is long, but these are the few that I wanted to highlight. He was mentored by Paul Robeson, the late great powerful black man. Paul Robeson was mentored by him. What a man to be mentored by. If y'all know about Paul Robeson, wow, this man did it all. He was an athlete, a singer, civil rights activist. Paul Robeson was the most interesting man in the world. If there was a definition, that was Paul Robeson, the most interesting man in the world. He did so much. One of the greatest black men of the 20th century, just in history, period. The late great Paul Robeson. Mr. Belafonte supported the civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s and was one of Dr. King's confidants. I wanted to really highlight that because he was on the forefront. You saw Dr. King, and as far as celebrities, you saw Sidney Poitier and Mr. Harry Belafonte. Lena Horne, yes, you had Marlon Brando and others, Burt Lancaster, but most notably, Mr. Harry Belafonte, who was also a close friend of Brother Malcolm. I want to highlight that too. He was a close friend of Brother Malcolm and Dr. King. Wow, what a man, what a life. What a life. You had the ear of Dr. King and Brother Malcolm. You were close friends with both of them. You knew their families. Could you imagine the stories Mr. Belafonte could have told, which he did? He's one of the people that I always wanted to meet in my life. It was Muhammad Ali, Nelson Mandela, who I saw in person when in 1990 when he was released from Robben Island, that prison on Robben Island. He came and he toured North America, and Detroit was one of the cities that he spoke at, the old Tiger Stadium on Michigan and Trumbull. Those of you from Detroit, y'all know about the old Tiger Stadium on Michigan Avenue and Trumbull Avenue. Well, Nelson Mandela spoke there in June of 1990. My mother and grandmother took me there. I was 14 years old. Never forget it. Never forget it. But he was one man I wanted to meet, Nelson Mandela, Mr. Sidney Poitier, Miss Lena Horne, and Mr. Harry Belafonte. Of course, I would have loved to have met Malcolm, Brother Malcolm, and Dr. King, and the messenger too. Would love to have met him, but I wasn't around. So, but person I do want to meet is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and hopefully, I get to meet him, as well as the brothers and sisters in the NOI. I hope someday I get to meet them. And when I say them, I'm talking about like Nuri Muhammad and Dr. Wesley Muhammad and Riza Islam and Brother Ben X and many others. But yeah, you're a close friend of Dr. King and Brother Malcolm. Wow, that's something. I said he was a confidant of one of Dr. King's confidants. He was blacklisted during the McCarthy era in the 1950s. Big surprise. Civil rights. Of course, McCarthy was something else. He bailed Dr. King out of the jail in Birmingham, Birmingham City Jail, and raised $50,000 to release other civil rights protesters. The man was a soldier. The man was the man was brave. He was a warrior. He contributed to the 1961 Freedom Rides, supported voter registration drives, helped organize the 1963 March on Washington. Also, he bankrolled the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, better known as SNCC, which a young Stokely Carmichael, later known as Kwame Ture, was a part of. Stokely Carmichael was part of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. That's where he started, making waves. Mr. Belafonte, later in his life in 2005, founded the Gathering for Justice, a social justice organization, after 5-year-old Jaisha Scott was handcuffed and arrested for being unruly in her Florida classroom. These devils handcuffed a 5-year-old black girl, handcuffed and arrested a 5-year-old black girl. Do y'all hear what I'm saying? For being unruly in her classroom down there in Florida. This was back in 2005. Mr. Belafonte witnessed it on the news, and he founded the Gathering for Justice. So about the Gathering for Justice, the Gathering for Justice, their mission is to end child incarceration and eliminate the racial inequities, that permeate the justice system. The Gathering for Justice has two state-based task forces. Justice League New York City, established in 2013, and Justice League California, established in 2017. Both of which bring together juvenile and criminal justice experts, advocates, artists, and individuals who've experienced or been impacted by incarceration directly. Hmm. What a man. Oh my God. I salute you, Mr. Belafonte. May you rest among the ancestors. Before I go any further, hit that thumbs up button, smash that thumbs up button down, hit the subscribe button so you get notifications on the new videos on here. In 1985, Mr. Belafonte helped organize the Grammy Award winning song, We Are the World. Those of us who grew up in the 80s remember that song, We Are the World. Every artist, from Michael Jackson to Willie Nelson to Stevie Wonder to everyone who was big in the 80s, was on that damn album. Dionne Warwick, anyone you could think of. Quincy Jones produced it, directed and produced it. He organized the Grammy Award winning song, We Are the World, a multi artist effort to raise funds for Africa. Never forget it. He performed in a Live Aid concert that same year. I remember that too. In 87, he received an appointment to UNICEF as a Goodwill Ambassador. Following his appointment, Mr. Belafonte traveled to Dakar, Senegal, where he served as chairman of the International Symposium of Artists and Intellectuals for African Children. What a soldier. So not only was he trying to fight for civil rights here in America, but also on the continent of Africa. He also helped to raise funds alongside more than 20 other artists and the largest concert ever held in sub-Saharan Africa. Wow. In 94, he went on a mission to Rwanda and launched a media campaign to raise awareness of the needs of Rwandan children. That was when the Rwanda had that civil war. They made a movie about that, Hotel Rwanda. Wow, Mr. Belafonte. Oh my goodness. Yes, he was a great artist, musical artist, and actor, but that's beside the point. He was an excellent person, humanitarian. He fought for Black people, not only here in America, but also in Africa. He took care of home first. Then he went and took his efforts to Africa. In 2001, Mr. Belafonte went to South Africa to support the campaign against HIV and AIDS. In 2002, Africare awarded him the Bishop John T. Walker Distinguished Humanitarian Service Award for his efforts to assist Africa. In 2004, Mr. Belafonte went to Kenya to stress the importance of educating children in the region. He was an advocate for prostate cancer since 1996, when he was diagnosed and successfully treated for the disease. He received humanitarian award at the BT Awards in 2006. Um, Represented UNICEF on Norwegian television. Also served on the advisory council of the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation, as well as an ambassador to the Bahamas. He was named an ambassador to the Bahamas. He was a longtime critic of U.S. foreign policy, which I'm not mad at him at all. Um, he spoke out against the U.S. embargo on Cuba. He attacked the U.S. invasion of Grenada. He praised Fidel Castro. Another tidbit about Fidel Castro. Did y'all know that Fidel Castro funded the civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s? Did y'all know that? Fidel Castro helped fund the civil rights movement. Fidel Castro was friends with both Dr. King and Brother Malcolm. Did y'all know this? He helped fund the civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s. And if I'm not mistaken, he came to Harlem to speak in the early 60s, I believe. Yes, look it up. Give me 1 second. I got to plug my device in. 1 second. All right, my apologies for the delay there. Um, but yes, so now this is where Mr. Belafonte was an advocate for hip hop. Mr. Belafonte is additionally known for his visit to Cuba, which helped ensure hip hop's place in Cuban society. Let me repeat that. Mr. Belafonte is additionally known for his visit to Cuba, which helped ensure hip hop's place in Cuban society. According to Jeffrey Baker's article, Hip Hop Revolution, Nationalizing Rap in Cuba, in 1999, Belafonte met with representatives of the rap community immediately before meeting with Fidel Castro. This meeting resulted in Castro's personal approval of, and hence the government's involvement in the incorporation of rap into his country's culture. Fidel Castro had that much respect for Mr. Harry Belafonte that he allowed hip hop to be incorporated into the country's culture. Mr. Belafonte was a huge advocate of hip hop. I remember him saying years ago that when hip hop was first created, he knew, he foresaw that it was going to be a global phenomenon. He knew it even before it even took off. He said, "This is something that's going to be great." He knew it. He said that he knew that back in the 70s. Mr. Belafonte is quoted as saying, "When I went to Havana a couple years later, the people in the hip hop community came to see me and we hung out for a bit. They thanked me profusely and I said, 'Why?' And they said, 'Because your little conversation with Fidel and the Minister of Culture on hip hop led to there being a special division within the ministry and we got our own studio.'" Mr. Belafonte was active in the anti-apartheid movement. He was the MC, Master of Ceremonies, at a reception honoring African National Congress President Oliver Tambo at Roosevelt House, Hunter College in New York City. He was avidly, ardently opposed to the Bush administration's involvement in Iraq. He called out Condoleezza Rice and the late Colin Powell. I remember when he did that. He was quoted as saying, and this is a quote from Brother Malcolm, "There is an old saying, in the days of slavery, there were those slaves who lived on a plantation, and there were those slaves who lived in the house. You got the privilege of living in the house if you serve the master, do exactly the way the master intended to have you serve him. That gave you privilege. Colin Powell is committed to come into the house of the master. Oh, as long as he would serve the master according to the master's purpose. And when Colin Powell dares to suggest something other than what the master wants to hear, he will be turned back out to pasture. And you don't hear much from those who live in the pasture. That is the God knows truth." Mr. Belafonte used a quote to characterize United States Secretaries of State Colin Powell and Condoleezza Rice. Powell and Rice both responded with Powell calling the remarks unfortunate and Rice saying, "I don't need Harry Belafonte to tell me what it means to be black." Well, obviously you do because you ain't black, but that's another story. Oh, okay. It says here, I remember this. Mr. Belafonte, along with Danny Glover, Dr. Cornel West, met with Hugo Chavez, who at the time was president of Venezuela. Chavez was an outspoken critic of Bush, W. Bush. Initiated a program to provide cheaper heating oil for poor people in several areas of the United States. That was why they were meeting with with President Chavez. He was quoted as saying during the meeting with Chavez, "No matter what the greatest tyrant in the world, the greatest terrorist in the world, George W. Bush says, we're here to tell you, not hundreds, not thousands, but millions of the American people support your revolution." Mr. Belafonte and Danny Glover met again with Chavez in 2006. Hillary Clinton didn't like this. Screw her. She refused to acknowledge Belafonte's presence at an award ceremony that featured both of them. Hmm. In 2006, at MLK, at Dr. King, um, at a speech on Dr. King at Duke University, Mr. Belafonte compared the American government to the hijackers of the September 11th attack, saying, "What is the difference between that terrorist and another terrorist?" He's right. Like I said, he was a very outspoken critic of President Bush, um, the Department of Homeland Security. Just an excellent, excellent human being. Great gentleman. I could go on and on, but I just wanted to highlight on those points. He was a man's man. Like I said, he was a soldier. I tweeted that we lost a great soldier. He was on the forefront, and he did not hesitate to speak out against the American government and how she's a terrorist, how America is the greatest of terrorists. He met with the late, great Fidel Castro and the late, great Hugo Chavez, people who America deemed as our enemies, as terrorists. He met with them. He was able to bring hip hop culture to Cuba. He was an advocate for hip hop. He loved hip hop. The man was born in 1927, but he saw something that many of those younger than him didn't see. He loved young people. He loved black people all over the diaspora, whether um, whether it was here in America, in the Caribbean, or in Mother Africa. He just loved black people and he fought for the rights of black people. Like I said, not just here in America, but in the Caribbean and in Africa. And I just salute him. I salute you, Mr. Belafonte. May you rest among the ancestors. You will be greatly, greatly, and sorely missed. And my condolences to your children. I know Sherry and and the rest of your family, your colleagues, friends, people you touched. Just my heartfelt condolences and prayers go out to you. Um, May Allah grant us, peace and comfort. All of not just us, but his family and his colleagues, close friends. Great man, great man, great man. 96 years young. Hit that thumbs up button, smash that thumbs up button down. Hit that subscribe button so you get notifications on when I do videos on here. Drop your comments below. Let me know what you think. Let's give our condolences to the Belafonte family, to his friends and colleagues, what so have you, to those whose lives he's touched. So just drop your comments and condolences on here. In the event, I'm gonna hop off of here. Y'all take care. And like I always leave you, be safe. Be safe, be safe. Beware and be aware. This devil is busy. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Brothers as well as sisters, again, be safe and beware. Beware and be aware. I love y'all. Thank you for your love and support. And I'm gonna hop off of here. And y'all have a blessed and wonderful day. All right. Peace and blessings. Rest in peace, Mr. Harry Belafonte.